Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the Locher Room. I'm Alan Locher. Today, we have 6 incredibly talented men and women who work their way up the ranks at Guiding Light, from college intern to one of the many producers bringing Springfield to life on a daily basis. The definition of a producer is a person responsible for the financial and managerial aspects of a movie or broadcast. I'm sure that this crew here will have something to add to that definition. I'm so looking forward to catching up with this team, hearing what they have to say about their time at Guiding Light, and learn what they are all up to today. Please welcome to the Locher Room the Daytime Emmy Award-winning team, David Brandon, Christopher Cullen, Alexandra Johnson-Gamsey, Amanda Sallen Glattstein, Janet Morrison, and Jennifer Simms. And I probably left off Jennifer's married name. Did I leave off your married name, Jennifer, David, and Chris? There we go. Everybody's added. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for
Thank
being here.
Hi there.
I was referring to Janet.
What did you say?
I said thank you for having us, Alan. I was waiting for Janet because she likes to talk.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about daytime television. I know David. David, you were a fan of Guiding Light probably as long as I have. Was everybody a soap opera fan?
I was a General Hospital fan.
Yeah, I wasn't a Guiding Light fan, but I watched almost every other soap. Except for the P&G ones. I never watched any of the P&G ones for some reason.
Wow.
I was Days of Our Lives fan.
Days of Our Lives, Janet?
Yeah, General Hospital, a little bit of the ABC shows, but this was like the number one thing I wanted to do was work in daytime.
Well, you had said that when you sent me that email. What, because of General Hospital?
Yeah. You watch it every day. It just feels like, I mean, everything they say, although it always feels a little bit cheesy about like, it's continuous, it's every day, it's consistent, it becomes part of people's lives. I just like always wanted to work somewhere in daytime.
You didn't have a specific role. You just wanted to work in daytime.
I did want to be a producer.
You did? Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I applied right out of college to As the World Turns and Guiding Light, but I had no idea what I really wanted to do. And then I got into communications after. But David, did you want to work there from watching it?
Oh, I mean, I don't remember a day up until 2009 with a Guiding Light not in my life, really, to be honest, up until it went off the air. But yes, I really wanted to play Reva's son, is what I wanted. And maybe some of my offstage antics proved that I did play Reva's son. I don't know. But I mean, when I went to college really to write, and then I just sort of fell into the producing, and then I got to do a little bit of everything. So it really worked out. I got to do everything. So that was really...
So raise your hand right now, and I'm pretty sure it's the majority of you here, who had an internship at Guiding Light. So David,
I had my internship at Another World, another P&G show.
Right.
That's where I started.
Okay, you did.
I was at All My Children.
And that was an internship at All My Children for you, David?
Yeah. In the writer's office at All My Children.
I mean,
I did that too.
That's how we met, Alex. Rodney.
Can you talk about I mean, for if there's a young, person watching, I mean, really, all of you got jobs because of those internships. Mm-hmm. How important, and for you, Jennifer, yours was a different kind of internship because you are from Cincinnati and it was through Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, it was an excellent experience, obviously, because they shipped me from, I was this Ohio girl who came straight from, Ohio right to Guiding Light, like the week I graduated college. And it was an award that Procter & Gamble, they're based in Cincinnati. So they kind of had a partnership with my university, and they would send a couple students up to New York City to work on the shows. And I had a friend who went to As the World Turns, and I got sent to Guiding Light. And then obviously the rest is history after that.
It really is. I mean, it's incredible that, all of you really ended up working there. So in the intro, I said, what does a producer, I said what the technical definition of a producer is. In your own words, Alex.
Well, I think it's a little different in soap operas from what you said. I mean, because technically, yeah, I think it is managerial and, financially responsible and stuff like that. But in soap operas, as a producer, we were also, I would say it was 50-50 between creative and management for that, because we were responsible for specific episodes. So, giving notes to directors, to give to the actors. At the end, we were actually even editing our own shows and creating the line cuts. So, deciding what stayed in the show and what went out if it was too long. So for soap opera specifically, I think it was more of a mix between creative and, management. But I definitely dealt with the budgets, the above the line budgets, all the, for the talent and writers and all that type of stuff. And, scheduling, all of that type of stuff.
And each of you had a different role as a producer, correct?
Yeah.
Jennifer and Amanda, why don't you talk about, Chris, go ahead.
No, to a degree we all did. I mean, yeah, at the end it was a very different machine by the last 2 years than it was prior to that. And at the end we were all kind of all hands on deck, kind of doing a lot of everything. Like Alex said, we were editing our own shows, and in addition to giving notes to directors for the actors, we were also responsible for, editing our scripts for those episodes, and so we would do that as well. So there was a lot of that, and then we all had our hands at some point, even though Jennifer and Amanda, and I know we all know how Jennifer and Amanda scheduled the show with all of our papers on the floor in the big office, but we all had our hands in that. We were all coming in, and we were all had our hands in scheduling the week. And I think by the end, it was, like I said, all hands on deck. We were all doing a little bit of everything in the producer world. In addition to, Alan, this, there's a lot of hand holding, and in the best way I mean this, babysitting of the cast. They need a lot of attention and motivation, encouragement, and enthusiasm from the producing team. And that was our job as well, to always be the cheerleaders, to always make sure that the cast was bringing their A game, but was also mentally prepared and always in a good place to be telling the stories that our writers were writing.
Yep. And Jen and Amanda, talk about what you guys had to, for the new model especially, you created a new way of putting our schedules together.
Yeah, so when I would get the scripts from Jill Laurie Hurst after they were, had gone through the writer's room and run and edited. And so I would get like the final script, and then I would read it and break it down, and it would go through this computer program that would literally break down every single scene, who was in the scene, and where it was located. And so then once I went through it for continuity and working with Jilly to say—
I have a question. Is there a program that exists, or did we create a program that does that?
It existed.
It existed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. I remember it was a script writing program. I'm spacing on the name of it.
I think Final Draft.
Final Draft.
Scheduling was the scheduling software we used.
Right. And so they would speak to each other. So they would type for a while, I was typing the scripts into Final Draft, because that's like, it would come in, the writers would write it in Final Draft, but the formatting would be off. So in order for it to speak to Jennifer's scheduling, like software, it needed to be exact. Otherwise you could miss an entire scene or miss somebody that was in the scene. So I remember literally having to go and like clean the scripts. That was what I had to do. I'd have to clean the scripts. I got it from Jilly with all of her edits, and then clean the scripts. And then I would say, okay, Jen, it's in. And then we would print it out. And each scene, who was in the scene and where it took location, literally turned into a strip of paper. And then Jen and I would literally sit on the floor in our office and figure out how we were going to get it done.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the world's biggest puzzle, really. Like, you have sometimes in big scenes, you know, when you're talking about weddings or the Bower barbecue or something like this, you have basically every cast member that has to be in that. But then they have vacations and they have time constraints, you know, and you can't keep everybody working for 1 million hours every day. So you have hours that you have to fit in. You have sets that, you know, before we were in the new model, the old model, we had sets that had to come up and go down. And, you know, so it was really, we were shooting sometimes, let's say 5 scripts a week, maybe 5 scripts over 2 weeks. So, you know, sometimes you're shooting someone from episode, let's say 355, and then the next scene is 382, you know, like you're going across. Yeah. So we really had to work with wardrobe and all the departments because their hair had to be the same, their clothes. We couldn't, you know, one time, I mean, a funny story, which wasn't funny at all at the time, but I wasn't paying attention to those little details. And I think it was a scene with Lizzie and who was it? Michelle Ray Smith. I think it was
Ava.
It was Ava. And they get in a fight and she dumps orange juice on
the cake.
Lizzie's head. It's something like totally, you know, then she's covered, her hair is a mess. I had scheduled a scene right after that, not paying attention to the little details, that Lizzie was in full, beautiful hair, done up, dry, wonderful, right? So missing that little detail means production had to stop. They had to take him up to hair, makeup, like shower her, redo her hair, do the whole thing. I only made that mistake once and I'll never forget it. But those were like the little details that we always had to be looking at when we were scheduling, you know, hundreds and hundreds of scenes.
And don't forget, when we went to the new model, we weren't all in the studio anymore. So it was like, are you in the studio or are you in PPAC? Like we had to like think of like you couldn't have someone and then heaven forbid you needed to be in the studio in the morning and then PPAC in the afternoon. Like that was one of the largest challenges, having 2 physical locations. You know, it used to be no matter what, we were all in the same location. Like in worst case scenario, we could go to the writers and beg and plead and say, can this please take place in company? And then that would happen. But
it's true. But, you know, since so many of us are fans, you know, when we were fans and you would complain watching whatever show you watched because an actor wasn't at this wedding or this, but you were also dealing with vacations, actor contracts where they, you know, only, you know, we could afford to pay them for 2 or 3 days per week, or, you know, there's so many factors that you have on top of all of that in what you know, your day-to-day work was.
Well, the actors on the 2 to 3 days a week, that really fell to the writers because it really depended on how many episodes they were in. Their guarantees were per episode, not for number of days that they were in. So what would happen is if you had somebody who had a guarantee of 2 days a week, and that meant you were in 2 episodes or, you know, 2 episodes that week, if they showed up in the 3rd day, if you needed them for a 3rd day, it would sort of be counted as an additional day. But that didn't get remedied until the end of their cycle. So like, let's say, for example, you had somebody who had a guarantee of 2 days a week, but one week they only worked 1 day for those 2 episodes. At the end, it all sort of equaled out. So sometimes there were additional payments, but a lot of times it all equaled out because some days they would come in and do 3 episodes on one day and not have to come in the rest of the time.
The best part of this is Alex had to deal with it. The rest of us are like nodding, but Alex had to really.
Well, from a budgeting point,
yeah,
right. From the budgeting,
yeah. Right, and also I used to do the scheduling, but you know, back in the old days when I did it by pencil and eraser, not like you know the fancy program that Jen and Amanda had, you know, because we did it. We literally had sheets of paper in a binder and we mapped it all out by episode and by scene and by character. And then what would happen is if we had like pre-tapes or post-tapes, like I remember like if you were adding stuff to a day from another episode, we would write them in red on the bottom. And then if they were scenes that were moving out to another day, you would circle them to indicate that they weren't being shot on that day. So that was a lot of erasing, you know, anytime something changed, you had to, you know, erase and start over.
And watching that evolution from like when I started until where we ended was crazy, right, Alex? I mean,
Oh yeah.
because we, traditionally we shot one episode a day, and like you really wanted to shoot that scene in that day, like that episode in that day. So if it was episode 500, you wanted to shoot all the scenes from 500 on Monday.
What year would you say we changed from shooting one day to?
It was a cost thing because
Right, but do you know what year that was that we?
Oh. I mean, you always shot additional pieces on a day. Like there was a lot of times that you did that, and there were cost differentials. Like you were doing that a lot of times to try and, as Jen mentioned before, minimize the sets going up and down at the beginning, because we were only budgeted. I remember at one point we were budgeted to take 2 sets down and 2 sets up a night and put 2 new sets up every night. But that got to be very expensive. So it was cheaper to have pay a director additional money to do scenes from another show that wasn't his, rather than to have, the 2 sets up and 2 sets down. So eventually like it went to like 1 set up and 1 set down. And then eventually like, Ellen was like, let's just put up all permanent sets. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of permanent sets, which set was your office?
That's a fun story, actually, because originally I was supposed to be the seedy motel room, and I had a little bit of a fit. Because who wants to go to work in a seedy motel room? But my argument, which was a valid one, was I had all the contracts. Like, because I dealt with all the budget and above the line stuff, I had all the contracts for the writers, directors, actors. I had all the budgets. Where was I going to keep those in a seedy motel room? So unfortunately,
under the mattress.
Yeah. So they ended up turning mine into the Cross Creek study for Reva and Josh. And unfortunately, even though she was my best friend there, but unfortunately Jill got the seedy motel room.
David, what was yours?
Well, I had this really tiny, it was the only good thing about having that tiny little office. You couldn't fit anybody but me in there. So I think they tried to make it an office, but I don't think they ever shot in there. Right? I don't know.
I feel like
so.
we do a couple of
so small.
Yeah, a couple of limbos in there, didn't we?
Yeah, maybe you got a phone call.
I think people they came in there to shoot like a one-way phone call. Like if you were going out of town, you had to have the infamous like, yes, I'll see you in 2 weeks. It was in my office. Like that was.
And Jen and Amanda, they didn't use yours because yours was with the scheduling, right? Yeah.
No way. I was Alan Spalding's office.
Alan Spalding's, and Janet, you
Lewis
didn't
Construction.
Oh, you did. Okay, because you had the digital space.
Their space was next door to my office. We never used that, but my office was Lewis Construction because I had a desk, so you could have it be like some kind of. And I had a second monitor. That's why. And they were like, "Well, an architect or someone could use this, so that can be your office."
And then wasn't Maria a hotel room, the Towers hotel room, and she had a Murphy bed that came down?
Yeah, she had a Murphy bed.
And then for a while, Jan was a nail salon, and then she turned to something else, but I don't remember what.
Oh my God, Jan's was a nail salon.
Ellen's was the chapel. Remember having
Ellen Wheeler had
the pews in her office.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have a producer meeting, and we'd have to sit in the pews.
So I felt like I couldn't swear.
How many executive Alex, I mean, you've worked with the most because you've been there the longest, but talk about some of the executive producers you worked with. You were Jill Farron Phelps' assistant.
Right. So I interned first in 88, I think. And then after I graduated in 90, somebody was going.
I want to hear, I mean, 88 was like a, big time at Guiding Light. What stands out? What stands out in your mind?
Well, I mean, I remember you just had, I think, Cassie and they were on
Goodwin.
Jamie Goodwin, they were on at that time, and Fletcher and all of that type of stuff. I remember that I interned, my internship started at 26th Street, and we were packing because they were moving to 44th Street. So I was there on 26th Street as well, which was a, compared to 44th Street, that looked like really dingy. Like I remember the offices being really old and dingy, and like 44th Street looked brand new at the time.
And
today,
today 26th Street is a beautiful Rachel
Yeah.
Ray and Wendy Williams or whatever.
But the other thing about my internship was that sort of started my location, like being involved in the locations, because I went on, I think they did, because I did it in the fall, winter. So I think it was when they went to Central Park and the public library with Harley and Alan Michael and Philip and Beth. And Beth at the time was Elizabeth Dennehy, I think. Blake at the time was Elizabeth Dennehy. So that started my whole trajectory with the locations. And then pretty much every location after that, since I started, I did all the locations. But yeah, so I interned, and then they called looking for me to do some temp work in the office when somebody was going on maternity leave or doing a leave. So I started that, and then Jill came in the following June, and they hired me to be her assistant. And I did that for several years. And then I was there. So I was there through Jill, Michael Lapson, Paul Rausch, John Comboy, Ellen, like
that's a lot of VPs.
Yeah. But it was it's a good time, and you just adapt to each EP and what they need, what their needs are, and what their, what direction they want to go in, and you just have to adapt to it.
Is there an EP you think you learned the most from?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on, you learn from all of them for sure, but the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned different things from all of them. Like, so from Ellen,
of course,
certainly learned, how to just push the limit. Like Ellen had more energy than anybody I've ever seen, and was willing to take chances to keep us on the air for as long as we could. And, that's amazing. Paul was incredible. He was, certainly a unique man. But I got along with him really well, and was able to, I learned a lot from him, be it, he was crazy at sometimes, but I learned a ton. And also from Jill.
We can learn from crazy people. That's for sure.
I mean, also from Jill. I mean, Jill was very talented with story and all of that type of stuff. I love Jill. And, I think, and look at her career. She's been on a lot of soaps and told a lot of great stories at all different places.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And Chris, you started at Another World. You ended up at All My Children, One Life to Live, and Guiding Light. How would you compare all of them? Like, what's the...
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly the ABC shows, One Life to Live and All My Children, certainly had a very different vibe and a very different workday than the P&G shows, for sure. All My Children was probably one of the easiest places I've ever worked. Their days were just scheduled nicely. It's time ago. I just remember All My Children was always a very pleasant, easy place to work. I worked way harder at Guiding Light and Another World on the P&G shows, but I was more involved in those shows. All My Children, I would come in as an AD, and I would do my one day of, ADing. I'd take the show to the edit the next day, and then I'd go off for, 3 days, and I'd come back and do the same thing again. So having that freelance existence, which was All My Children, One Life to Live for me, was very different than being, part of the team and part of the family at Another World and Guiding Light. Same with As the World Turns. As the World Turns was also a freelance existence for me, not a permanent gig.
But you have Alex to thank, right, for bringing you. She kept bringing you back.
Yes, Alex has always. Alex brought me on at the beginning, and I have my crazy story of being fired by Paul Rausch, and Right after,
do you want to tell that crazy story?
I mean, and then after Paul left, Alex brought me right back again. She right away. There was very little downtime between when I left and when I came back. It's kind of a complicated story. You kind of need to understand the visuals of our control room. But I was an AD and I lived my life on a headset, so I had something in my ear and I had a microphone in front of me, and I sat next to the director. But there were other people in the control room that I could always talk to through my microphone by just hitting a button. So I was sitting next to the director. It was Bruce Barry that day. Bruce had turned around to have a conversation with Paul, who was sitting behind Bruce, and they were talking to each other. I turned, I was facing them, but I was talking to Butch, our audio supervisor, in his little booth on the other side of the control room, and I'm pressing my button and I'm talking to Butch. And Paul turned to me and he's like, "How dare you interrupt me?" I'm like, I'm not even speaking to you. I'm speaking to Butch over there. And that whatever words were exchanged between us, it did not sit well with him. And he went to Alex during our lunch break. He's like, "I don't want Chris to work here anymore." And so Alex had to call me in. She's like, "What the F just happened in the control room?" and so that was the end of my first tenure at Guiding Light. And then less than a year later, Paul had left, and then Alex called me back, and I went back. For another 9 years.
We've all had those moments. Janet, talk about getting your contract for being a producer and then really taking charge and creating that incredible digital team, and explain it for folks.
So like I said, I had always wanted to be a producer. So when you're moving up from like intern to, I think we were all production coordinators at some point, maybe not Chris, but as a production coordinator, it's like
I just see the heads are all nodding.
So we all worked as a production coordinator, and then you are an AP, like an associate producer, and then when you eventually move up to producer, your deal structure changes and you actually sign like a contract, an actual like grown-up person
you
contract.
Actually make money.
Yeah, but you yeah, also that. But I remember actually when Susan Savage sent me my contract, and I remember actually like where I was sitting in my apartment when I put pen to paper on my contract, and just remember thinking like how awesome and lucky I felt to be able to like get to that point, because I had always wanted to work in daytime. And I think you've heard everybody talk about how long they were at the show, and this kind of family that Guiding Light was. It's hard to get in. Like, no one leaves. Everyone stays at these shows for so long and works there for like decades. And when you realize that as like an intern, you start to be like, how am I going to get in here if no one's ever going to go? So I think that moment really stuck out to me as one of the more proud moments on the show for me. And then the digital team, I mean, to Alex's point of Ellen being one to just push the boundaries. At the time, she saw a need and an opportunity to create more content to go online, which at the time we didn't have a website. No shows had websites. I think the networks barely had websites at that point.
Yeah,
and she was like,
yeah, we had little sites on CBS, and then we finally had created those Soap City sites or something.
Yeah. But you didn't really have extra content on them. So she was like, you know what, we should start doing behind the scenes and, shoot some of that stuff. Remember we did that, that like side series with Rob and Mandy, The Law, when they did that. And then she also got us into podcasting, which at the time was
ahead of its game,
right?
Yeah.
And now it's like this.
It was, but to what detriment though? Like Ellen and Janet were literally living at the studio. Like we would come in and be so mad because Ellen and Janet had spent the entire night at the studio. Like literally.
I did see that 44th Street studio a couple times overnight.
But that digital content, I mean, it was before people were doing it. I mean, we really, in some respects, everyone has a different opinion about the new model. If in some respects, I wish the new model had started earlier, because I think, what we were doing might have truly helped. I think by the time we finally did it, there probably were decisions, it was probably too late, I mean, is what I'm saying, but I don't really know that for sure. But I mean, think about it. A lot of what we did was sort of ahead of what other shows were doing at the time.
I think you'll be watching stuff now, and I'll be like, "Yep."
Yeah,
trying to figure this out.
You know, when we went to the new model, we took, you know, the soap bloggers, influencers, there weren't influencers really at the time, and we took them to PPAC and let them spend the day with us, you know, exploring the new model. Jill, Laurie, and Ellen sat down in, you know, the house and spoke to them, but nobody was doing those types of things at that time.
I think if we
it goes back to what Alex said before. Sorry, David. I just wanted to reiterate what Alex said before, that Ellen had so much energy and Ellen was willing to push things to the limit to keep us on the air. And I remember when Ellen was explaining the new model to all of us, we all sat down together and she said, "I'm giving you the skills you will need for the future." And she was right, because everything that you see on television now is some sort of branch out of what we were attempting to do in PPAC with the new model. Sorry, David.
No, you're fine, Chris. I'll piggyback off that. I think if we had made it longer past that 2009 hump, which was like a crazy time for television in general, and made it into more of when streaming became a mainstay as opposed to, you know, what it was in 2009, I think there might have had a possibility of staying on the air, because what they're doing today is basically what we were doing with cameras that the technology wasn't there for what we were doing, you know, a decade ago, and now it's what everybody's doing because
so many of you, I mean, you created, I mean, fans don't really, I mean, you know, Ellen and you guys created that whole model, everything, sound, cameras that didn't exist, you know, building packs and things, you know, there were so many things you did. And I agree, David. I say this all the time about As the World Turns, One Life to Live, All My Children, and Guiding Light. They all just went off before the streaming services had it down, because I think not that I think all four might have survived, but one or two of those shows might have survived today, you know, still been with us today. David, you got the opportunity at the, you know, you were given to write an official script assignment, and you wrote the scene of Lillian returning to Maureen's grave. Can you talk about how that, I mean, as a Guiding Light fan, it must have really
it was great because, well, let me start off by saying that, like, I watched Guiding Light my whole life, but my mom never forgave Lillian, ever. I think today she would still say, like, "Oh, that Lillian," for sleeping with Ed and causing Maureen, like, it was all Lillian's fault. Like, no Ed in this, just Lillian. And my mom's eyes. So it was like a joke that I used to have Tina call my mom every once in a while, like, "Mom, look, I'm with Lillian." She's like, "I don't want to talk to her." So when we were, you know, pitching those last week of shows, Jill, Laurie, Hurst, who, you know, everyone's talking about. Jill, you're trending.
She's always trending in the locker room.
So we talked about, like, can we have this scene? Like, I think it's so important that Lillian acknowledges her role in Maureen's death, which, as fans, we know, like, Maureen was such a huge part of the heart of Guiding Light. That's that character that was important. And unfortunately, you know, the character left us too soon. I pitched a lot of stories to try to bring her back from the dead, but those never came to fruition. So, and we worked, Jill and I worked a lot to make that scene really work, both for Tina and for the fans and for my mom and for Maureen, because, you know, they're such a legacy character on the show. And, you know, it was thrilling. Like writing one of those last weeks of air shows was, as a fan and as somebody who loved the show, was so fulfilling for me.
That's awesome. We have a lot of fans actually watching today, not only Guiding Light fans, but our colleagues, Nancy Williams-Watt, Kim Armstrong, Maria Ferrari. Woo! Nicole Forrester says, "Such fun to see all of your faces again. I love reminiscing about GL and seeing it through your eyes." So there's a lot of people here today to say hello. Alex and everybody, what are some of your favorite remotes
Oh,
Alex has more to choose from, but I would pick Universal.
That was the best remote.
That was the best.
well,
It was so fun.
for me, there were two, I would say, but only like parts. Like Universal, the second Universal. I did Universal twice, actually. I did the first Universal was Alan Michael and Lucy's wedding down there, and then the last one, of course, which was sort of our final hurrah. But that one was just fun from beginning to end. Like we had a really good time on that. I'm not going to say why. I'll let somebody else talk about that. And then Puerto Rico, actually. Puerto Rico was one of the most difficult remotes that we did. We took an insane amount of people to Puerto Rico. We were there for a week or 2 weeks. You know, we were using a crew, a lot of, not crew like camera guys, but like extra crew and stuff from Puerto Rico who were used to doing movies and moving at a movie pace. Like they did not understand our pace at all. And it was a crazy, crazy time. But
that was a fun remote.
It was that last night. Were you there that last night, Alan, for the wrap party?
Yeah, you mentioned that in your email to me, and I maybe I just don't remember exactly.
Well, the resort we were at was large,
incredible.
so we had golf carts to all get around.
Oh yeah, David driving it into the.
Well, I wasn't going to say who. But
not this David. Not this David.
Unfortunately, it was the end of a really long week, so we all had a little bit to drink, and we were just riding these golf carts around, having a great time. Like I remember Lou and I were on one with Anthony Adabo, and just driving all around. And one of our actors had picked up somebody else's golf cart, and the crew member had left it at the hotel because it had a flat tire. But this actor did not know that it had a flat tire, and he took it out on the golf course. And somehow, because he didn't want to be on the path, he was on the grass once he realized that it had a flat tire. But he went off and landed in like a sewage tank. So like into like a sewage pond. So the whole golf cart went into the sewage pond. And the crew member went to check out of the hotel the next day, and they tried to charge him like $12,000 for a golf cart. And he was like, "What?" So yeah, it was a fun night. That was a fun night.
And we flew home sadly the day that JFK Jr. passed away.
I didn't remember that. That. No, I was there a little bit longer. Like I stayed to wrap things up, but
okay,
yeah, that was fun.
Chris, how did you end up squirting Kim Zimmer with a kitchen hose, like on set?
Oh yeah, like as we were doing notes. Yeah. So she was blocked we were in PPAC at the house that was Cross Creek, and she was standing at the kitchen doing some sort of business, I guess dishes or something. She had some activity to do, and we very rarely rehearsed in PPAC. But for whatever reason, I don't know if we had a baby on the set or what it was, but we had to do a rehearsal this day. And so we rehearsed all of her business at the sink. She had a lot of stuff to do that day in the kitchen. And as I came out to give her notes in between rehearsal and taping, I was trying to show her what I needed her to do. And when I picked up the hose, I hit the trigger and I squirted Kim Zimmer from like her neck all the way like down to her waist. And we were ready to tape. So if looks could kill in that moment, Kim killed me, certainly. But again, as I told you, Alan, within a minute and a half of me apologizing, Kim was fine, and she was fine. And it was a great moment. And we sent her to wardrobe, and they put the blow dryer on her shirt, and we went on and we shot the scene. But yeah, it's that moment of, as it's happening, you're like, oh, did I just do this? Yeah,
150%. Yeah. You all must have faux pas that you are hiding under your
David.
Not
well, I know.
Not one.
Please share some. David, you talked about the hotel room with the wrong number on it.
Well, I mean, We could probably write a book on my faux pas, really.
Well, but you also have to tell people it's because your job, you did continuity for so long.
I did
too,
continuity
which
for
is
a long time.
Hard.
And like Amanda, well, Janet, did you take it over first and then Amanda, or we went right to Amanda? Went right to Amanda. Okay.
Actually, explain. I mean, the word
Yeah.
makes sense, but for people who might not fully understand continuity on a daytime soap, cannot be, especially a daytime soap that had been on for 70 years. Can't be easy.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, but
but you were also had more of, than Jen and Amanda, who didn't watch Guiding Light. You had definitely a wealth of knowledge in your brain that most other people doing continuity may not have.
We need David for that brain hole. We're always going to his office, like, we need help with this. Can you explain? You are like the Guiding Light book, like you have it all.
Yeah, for sure.
Taking over continuity from David was literally the most difficult thing that I could not even imagine. Just because, like you said, he had the learning curve was so steep, and I was never a daytime fan. I'd never watched a soap a day in my life till college when my roommate was obsessed with Procter & Gamble soaps. That's how I got into this. So not talking to David, I wouldn't have been able to do my job without David.
Thank you.
Go back to your faux pas. Go back to your faux pas.
Yeah. So. Well, the one I really remember that stands out in my mind, because I was really scared, because you asked me the question of what made me scared, and this made me scared. We shot all these scenes. So there was the whole story when Grant left, and we didn't know exactly what was happening. And we shot this scene as a fantasy of him in the boardroom. And it was shot as a fantasy, but it was really the reveal that he was alive. And this started this whole mystery for Gus and Harley trying to find out that Philip was alive. And we were shooting in this weird hallway of doors with numbers on them. And it was all about I don't remember the specifics, but it was room 23, Philip is behind door number 23 in this apartment building or something. And they were supposed to be scouring the hotel looking for this mystery room number. And whatever the mystery room number was behind their heads. And we shot all these scenes with the mystery room number behind their heads. And we couldn't reshoot it because Grant had already left, and it was on this secret tape. And then I realized it after we had finished shooting all the scenes. And I was like, oh no. And I had to go, I don't remember who was line producing that day, but I had to go and tell them
and did the audience pick up on it, David? Was there any kind of?
We shot them.
Oh, you did reshoot it. You wound up reshooting it.
We shot them. Yeah, it was on 44th Street. I specifically remember that. But no one else in the building knew. Very few people, not no one, but very few people knew that fantasy scene of Philip
was going to play
as the reveal of him.
Right, was going to play later. Yeah.
It was supposed to be a fantasy that got cut because the show was long, and really it was the truth that he was alive. So I was petrified that day. I'm going to get fired.
Oh, I'm sure things like that would make you sweat. Anybody else have a good one?
Thankfully, no.
God, yeah.
Really?
Not with that. I mean, there was other things besides moments. I know in PPAC, you would have to, make your day, and you were running people between things. So it was high stress, but I don't know if there's ever, I remember Chris, the day you took over for Wheeler, she was supposed to do a wedding, and she had to stay in New York. And so you did somebody's wedding in PPAC, and it was your first big PPAC day. And Chris is running through, setting up all these setups. And I'm looking at the monitor, and it's dark now. I was I don't know what he thinks he's doing, but this is we're not going to be able to see this scene. And I'm just watching him run around. He's okay, ready. He yells action. He gets to the monitor. He looks at me. He goes, you can't see it. I go, yeah, I already went through the script and made sure we could cut it. I was I just let you play this out. But it was more stuff like that, high stress, but I don't know if I can't think of anything that was a specific moment. Maybe I blocked it out.
But David, it's smart that you said something, because even Maria Ferrari just said the viewers even noted when the extras were doing something wrong. She remembers a viewer complaining because an extra's coffee cup was on the opposite side of the nurse's station in the next scene.
Oh my God.
I would pick up on that stuff. Like,
Yeah,
I hate
sure.
it when they move stuff. They used to do this in the Spalding study all the time. They would move like where things were located to serve like the story purpose. Like, oh, we need him to do this, so let's move this thing that's always been here over to the other side of the room and act like, oh, it's always been there. And I'm like, it's not always been there.
I love that everyone's showing up today. Sugar's here. I call her Shug. Kristen Doherty. She's cracking up. She's cracking up. She's cracking up over here. Was there an actor that you were most hesitant if you had to pick up the phone to call? Come on. For whatever reason.
I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. I was hesitant to call all of them because I was I was the one who had to call them for their schedules. Like that was
you were the harbinger of doom.
Yeah.
You know, and not all of them wanted to hear from me if I had to call them in for like one scene, you know, so they had to trek all the way in maybe for, 40 minutes. And those were really hard phone calls to make, but it was usually because like we had to. There was just
I never felt bad about that. Ever.
No.
They were getting paid a lot of money to come in and do that one scene. I really didn't care about that.
It's the worst.
I think also the mornings on the bus, if an actor didn't show up to go to PPAC, if you're waiting on the bus and there's 40 people on the bus ready to pull out from the studio to go to PPAC at 5 o'clock in the morning, and so-and-so is missing, and you've got to make that phone call, and you're waking them up, and they're not going to make the bus for another 20, 25 minutes. That was always not so much that you hated calling that actor, you just hated that moment.
Yeah. Justin Lee's always impressed me, like in the sense that he never looked at a script until that morning. So sometimes like we would be like killing one of his kids or something, and they'd be like, hey, you might want to call Justin and let him know. And you, hi, Justin. We're killing Coop tomorrow. Just wanted to let you know. Okay, bye.
Janet,
the next day he'd be like, oh, we're killing Coop? Like you never called. So, and then he'd give some, Emmy-worthy performance, and you'd just be spellbounded by it. And it was amazing.
Can you talk about some of your favorite moments like that? I don't know that that's a favorite moment, but but watching, a one-on-one interaction with one of the cast, or, watching one of them perform, because watching them on a day-to-day sometimes was incredible for us, like just to see what they would do. But do you have a favorite moment with a cast member, on screen or off?
I have a favorite moment, but it's not on screen. I remember distinctly when Tom had started. Alan, actually, you guys were looking for him, and I was a production coordinator, and there was something he had to do by a certain time, I think, for an interview. And I think Kristen Callahan called me and was like, you have to find him. And I wandered as like a production coordinator all over 44th Street, like looking for him, walked into like the phone to be like, you have to call Kristen. But I think it's like, at least for me with the cast, I remember how good everybody was, but I think it's more of all those like little things, like, to Chris's point, like being on the bus, being behind the scenes with them, like hanging out with them on set. Like that's the stuff that at this point has stuck more than I think for me.
Yeah. You were always worried about being late for that bus, weren't you?
Yes, I put that. He asked what the scariest moment was. I was like oversleeping for PPAC. That thing left. I had to leave my apartment at like 4 something in the morning to get into the city for the bus. I would sleep with the lights on my couch instead of in my bed, so that it was like inherently uncomfortable and I wouldn't like sleep through an alarm. But I think that's sometimes when we talk about the new model and some of those things, like that's what not everybody realizes is like we were up a lot of times at like 3:30, 4 o'clock to like get there through the dead of winter, like in big puffy coats and hand warmers. And to Chris's point, you're trying to keep your enthusiasm up because you're the person that people are looking at that day, and it's cold and you're tired.
I don't know if
that was cursed. Somebody was cursed. It always like was freezing or snowing or raining or.
Oh, I don't remember now, but you're right.
I don't remember either.
Janet, was it you who put the Coop remote? Was somebody put the Coop remote was one of their favorites? But it was you, because David, I was there that day. That was
Janet
cold.
was there too. It was the coldest day ever.
It was so
coldest
cold.
day ever.
And I was like,
Ever.
"Can we just blow up this car because I'm so cold and it was going to be warm?"
That was the only time you felt warmth, is when that car exploded.
And it was one of those Ellen did not stop days, and so I was like following her around, like, and then we blew up that car. I was like, "Can we just stay here and enjoy the warmth for a minute? Do we have to put it out right now?"
Oh, I forgot about that. It was so cold.
So cold.
I would say, like, when you were talking, going back to like favorite moments, like Tina Sloan, when I was a production coordinator, Tina Sloan, we used to work late then, like, because money at the beginning wasn't as tight as it was towards the end. But so we would be working late, and each coordinator at the time was assigned a late night, and you had to stay until the end of production. And mine was Thursday nights. So when they were doing stuff and Tina didn't have to be on set, she'd come down and we'd watch 90210 together in the office. And then I saw Brian Buffington just logged on. I like to refer to him as the brat, but I became great friends with his mom, and just watching a lot of the kids on the show, like the scenes of Bill and Ben and Henry and HB on that porch in the rocking chairs, like one of my favorite all-time scenes ever. So, there's so many good memories.
Yeah.
Brian just texted, if I was still on the show when Alex became executive producer, I wonder how she would have killed me off.
I wouldn't, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, I mean, you are the longest producer, who stayed with the show. I mean, you've seen a lot of, talent come through that door. I mean, Janet just mentioned Tom, but
yeah,
I mean, so many. Tammy, Tammy, Matt Bomer, my God.
Which is really kind of funny, because I'm not somebody who, and they will all agree to this, I'm not somebody who really, I don't know how to say it. Like, I didn't really endear myself probably to the actors. Like, I'm not somebody who wanted to be all of their friends and stuff like that. I'm just not. And there are a few that I'm very good friends with, but just remembering some of them, like Matt Bomer coming through. Matt Bomer was the nicest person to ever walk the halls of Guiding Light ever. Like, he was one of the nicest people.
He was
today. And then there are some that you wish had never graced the halls. So
there are some troublemakers. I mean, Tommy was as nice as pie, but you did have to chase him.
But that's okay, because he had the talent to back it up, and he was a good guy.
And he was such a delight about it that I was like, like could not have been more pleasant.
Same thing with John Driscoll. Half the time he couldn't get to work on time, John Driscoll, but he was a good guy. Like, you didn't,
What about that? Really what about that guy, Paolo Benedetti? Couldn't get to work on time either.
I'll talk to you about him afterwards.
Paolo, but he didn't either. Yeah. It's so funny though. I mean, you really do deal with, what we deal with, on the spectrum, with cast members is a lot,
Yeah.
I don't think the audience understands that, even though the audience is spending 5 days a week with these characters and they are in their lives every day. But behind that is this team of people, and even bigger than us, I don't know what we were, 60 people, 75 people, when all of us, and we're together all the time. We're together 5 days a week, and we're together 12, 14 hours a day, putting all of this together. So, like, to Alex's point, Alan, when you say what are the best memories, or to Janet's point, to me it's my time with these people that are the memories of what was happening behind the scenes, and some of the story stuff gets lost. I remember key plot points, but I remember being with this team of people and constantly trying to do our best at all times and create something that was new 5 days a week. And those are the memories that I hold that are the clearest.
Oh, yeah.
And
some of my best friends are here. You know?
Yeah, I said the same. You know, the same. Like, you guys are still my family to me.
Yeah,
you know,
you know
your faces today. You know, you really were like. I spent more time with you than I did anyone else during that time of my life, and you know, you're not just coworkers to me. And you know, I think everyone, whether it's all the departments, all the actors, all the producers, you know, everyone, it was just this one big family. You know,
for a while after the show, we started trying to get together like every month or every other month at each other's houses and sort of doing like a potluck or whatever. And then everybody sort of spread to different, you know, areas. Chris and David ended up in California, and, you know, we all just sort of disbanded a little bit. For a while afterwards, we tried to do that just to get back together.
But we've all been
I will say
together in some way. We're still, or then and now, it was, you know, we've had single people, we've had marriages, we've had divorces, we've had babies, we've had career changes, we've had big life events that were, you know, we all went through together. Even if it was just one of us experiencing it, the other members of this group were there too for really key moments in people's lives, for sure.
Are there 6 kids here? 2, 4, 6
kids?
Jen
Yes.
Oh. Jen has 2. Amanda has 2. Yeah. You all have 2. How did you all survive?
You had to remind me.
That was where I was going. I thought each of you.
I didn't know where you were going.
How has it been during the pandemic, having your kids at home?
It's been trying. It's been trying.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, I'm working full time and then having kids in virtual school at home, and you know, trying to manage both of those things simultaneously. It definitely tests you. I'll say that. We've grown very close. We have a very
but we've been like, you grow close and you're such a unit now. And my oldest daughter is going to sleepaway camp this summer, and I don't like, we have literally been together for so long, and so we're such a unit at this point. My son will be like an unanchored ship. Like, I don't know, like, it's very that looking back, yes, there were moments where you really just wanted to like hurl yourself against a wall, but there are moments though, like I am grateful though for their ages, and like they're 5 and 7, and just like they're fun. They found fun. They figured out the fun.
Definitely. They definitely kept you, you know, in the throes of the pandemic when everything was scary and people were stuck in their house and bored. Like, I was never bored. It was always crazy fun time around here as a 5 and a 7-year-old. Exactly. So it was just chaos, but it kept my mind off things, and it kept me busy, and it kept me laughing, you know, above all else.
I did not have time to pick up a hobby.
No.
You didn't learn another language, Amanda?
I have a couple questions. So, you know, we don't have CBS here kicking us off the air at, 5 o'clock. So I'm keeping you around. But Stephanie asked a fan, what was one of the hardest scenes you had to produce?
Ooh.
God, so many things.
Baseball was hard.
Baseball,
that was really.
I told Ellen that was my most challenging day. I think on Guiding Light was the baseball game.
That was really hard because
that was really hard.
No offense to Marty West at all, because he's an actor, not a baseball player, but he could not throw a ball to save his life. And
but that is part of it. Marty didn't know how to play baseball.
So we spent a lot of time.
Yeah, and we weren't on a normal set. We had demolished one whole studio and built a baseball stadium in that studio. So it wasn't a typical 3-camera shoot where we were just shooting, across the proscenium. This was a very elaborate camera setup, and we had certainly more than 3 cameras. I don't even remember what we had, but it was an amazing. Really almost like shooting.
It was John Conboy.
It was
right?
John. Yeah, and I feel like Matt directed that. Was that Matt?
He did. It was Matt Legel. It was an amazing.
And it was like
set.
We made a movie that night, and we worked until God knows what time, but it had to be 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. 4 o'clock. Yeah, that was an all-nighter, and it was a really difficult shoot.
That was a long day. Because Chris, that's when we first met. I first remember.
Yeah, that was way back at the beginning. Back at the beginning for me. And then another one, not to make it all about me, but Frank and Olivia's wedding in PPAC which we had to shoot in a blizzard, and we had no choice but to shoot this wedding in a full-on blizzard in Peapack, New Jersey. And that was a really challenging day because all of our locations were running out of the church, running across the park. You know, Natalia was chasing Olivia through the park. We were in a blizzard, and we did it anyway. We threw coats on all of them, and we made it work. I don't think we had everybody. We didn't have a full complement of people because I feel like there were crew members who couldn't make it that day. So we were all kind of doing double duty that day to get that wedding shot. And it was a big, big day in a blizzard.
Wow.
I guess the one that I liked the least was also a John Conboy during John Conboy's time. He really wanted to push the envelope in terms of, I don't know, being a little bit more risque or whatever. So there was a scene, I don't even remember too much, but it was Deborah Zoe on a rooftop. And I don't remember if it was, Tony, who was it, Steven?
Or Daniel. Was it not Daniel?
I don't remember. Maybe it was Danny. I don't remember who it was, but it was out there. It was too much. And John had basically told Bruce to like push the envelope. And so Bruce Berry was doing that. I felt extremely uncomfortable with what was going on, and I was trying to get a hold of Bobby Kochman to be like, back me up here. Like, this is not okay. But Bobby was in some meeting. I was looking for Maria. Maria was in the meeting. Like, Bobby was in something he couldn't get out of, and I don't remember what it was. And I remember going down to edit afterwards. I think I made them do 2 versions of it. And I went down to edit afterwards. I'm like, that is never going to air. Like, you cannot air that. Because we were airing at 10 a.m. in some places, you know, and it was just not appropriate for our audience and what we were doing at the time.
Alex, explain what it was. So we know we were shooting almost a little bit of.
It was
nudity.
almost, yeah.
It was a sex scene between them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it was just not good. Not good for our show at that time, you know.
Yeah, 10 a.m. When we moved from 3 to 10, it changed how, you know, what you could show, really.
Did we shoot a butt shot of someone, I recall? Yes?
I don't remember if that was... I honestly don't remember the full thing. I blocked it in my mind. I just know I did not like that one.
Yeah.
So.
Well, talk about winning the Daytime Emmy and the whole experience for each of you from your point of from your point of view. Alex, you want to go first?
Okay. So that was the year that we did all of those isolated episodes. And I remember that each of the producers,
the Wednesday.
Yeah, all the Wednesday episodes. Yep. So I remember all the producers, you know, took home copies of the episodes and really combed through. And I remember I was dating my now husband at the time, and I was like, okay, go through these episodes with me, see what you think. And there were 2 that I really liked, and he actually liked them too. And I was like, well, if he's a non-viewer, that's like a really good thing because he's understanding what the story is and all that type of stuff. And then, so I think Maria, Jan, and I pulled our like favorite ones out of it. And then we made the whole production office, I think, watch. And I felt really strongly about those 2 episodes. And those are the ones that got chosen, which I was really happy about. And it was
Inside the Light. Was that what they were called?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think it was Dinah's birthday and her birthday party. And then it was the episode with Pelfrey and Richie Coster in that room. It was the really intense. I don't remember, again, like Chris, I don't remember the exact storylines and plots. I just remember that that's what it was. And so then the night of the Emmys, it was really interesting that year because we couldn't have a lot of people down on the orchestra level with us. A lot of people were up in the rafters. Only people really who were on the ballot got to be in the audience. So Maria and I are sitting next to each other. And I actually had taken Amelia Marshall as my guest. So she was sitting next to me. And we knew that there were 3 ties that year because the head of CBS Daytime at the time had told us. They didn't know what categories there were ties in. They just knew that there were 3 ties. So Maria and I were like counting down. We're like, it's getting close. Like there might be a tie for best show. And we got to like the final two, and we're like, oh my God, there's a tie for best show. And then they go to announce the winner, and out comes Rachel Ray to announce the winner. And Maria turns to me and goes, we're winning this. I'm like, what do you mean we're winning this? How do you know? And she goes, because I don't really like Rachel Ray, and it'll be just my luck that she's the one that hands our Emmy. And I was like, okay, sure enough, we win. We all go up on stage. I trip on stage in center stage. I trip, and Maria's like trying to catch me. And then after that, I don't remember anything.
Go ahead, David.
Oh no, that's my favorite moment when Alex was
and you can watch it on YouTube. Occasionally I show it to people on YouTube. Yeah,
we watched it on the loop for a little while. I think we had Tom Bornkamp do like a repeat of it for us.
Chris, I think you should tell your story though.
Well, I was one of the one I was up in the rafters. I was not down in the orchestra, and we were at what was the Kodak Theater, I guess, at the time, right? That's what it was called. And we were told as we came in, you either had to check your cameras or you weren't allowed to have cameras. We didn't have cameras on our phones then. We had cameras. And I went in with my camera anyway, and I guess I was taking pictures of, we must have won other awards that night. Did any of our actors win that night?
I think the writers won, didn't they? The writers.
Yeah, the writers won, yeah.
Did Tom win, maybe?
Maybe, but I had a reason to have my camera out, and I was taking photos of our cast on stage, or our producers, or our directors, or our writers on stage. And a very angry usher came to me and demanded that I give him my camera. And I just as angrily stated that I would not be handing my camera to this person. And we just went during the Emmy, as the Emmys are going on down on the stage, I'm having an argument with an usher about my camera, and he wanted to take my camera, and I would not give him my camera.
They
threatened to throw me out, and I was insulated. I think Nidhi was on one side of me, so I think I was
behind you.
And Stephanie, I was surrounded. Right, I was surrounded by everyone, so I knew nobody could come and physically get me. I had like a wall of women protecting me, and I wound up holding onto my camera, and I did not have to give it in.
Alex, I don't know if you saw, but Brian Buffington is going to watch on YouTube for the rest of the evening.
I saw. That's okay. I'll get him back somehow.
Jen, you mentioned how special the Emmy was for you. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean it on multiple levels, but I just think getting best show and seeing like all of these people had a part of this. You know, it was like we all won. It's like everyone was getting that acknowledgement, you know, on every level, because it took so many people to make these shows happen. So seeing everyone be able to be like, yes, we did it, you know, and then the epic after party where we all jumped in the pool in our dresses and suits and stuff was fun too.
That's right.
Yeah, that was fun. That it's later in the evening when I get to have fun at those things, because early on it's a lot of work.
I forgot about that too, Jen. Shocking, but I forgot about those ones.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But that was fun. I have pictures of it, David.
LA was fun. Do you all want to talk about what you're doing now, Chris?
Sure. Yeah.
Sitting in your car, sitting in his car, driving.
Sitting in my car. We have no electricity in my neighborhood, so I've had to come out of the canyon and sit in a Starbucks parking lot on Sunset Boulevard. I am now, I left Guiding Light and, hopped around, did, again, freelanced around One Life to Live and All My Children and As the World Turns, for certainly a few months after. I also had a, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire has been a long time job for me. I've always dropped in and out of that show whenever they need me, so I'm always back doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I did that also after Guiding Light. But I went out to LA and I worked on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for 10 years, and recently in July I left Real Housewives and now I'm working for Netflix, but in the same capacity as an executive producer, and I'm doing that now, overseeing shows. I just got back from Austin, Texas. I just launched a new show for them that's going to air the beginning of next year.
Bravo. Hey, who's the executive producer of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Right, it's still Michael Davies. always been Michael Davies.
Does Vinny Rubino work on that show, or
He
am I
doesn't-
getting that?
No, you got it right. Back in the day, certainly during the Regis years and during the Meredith years, Vinny was part of the
Okay.
team. But his latest incarnation with Jimmy Kimmel and the incarnations that were in Vegas a couple of years ago, Vinny was not part of that.
Gotcha.
But
'cause
Vinny's all over the place. Vinny's doing Pyramid, and he's doing tons of other great, successful game shows.
I worked with him at Regis and Kathy Lee decades ago. Decades ago. And Professor Brandon?
It's not professor, but
I know.
I know.
Mr. Brandon.
I know. That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's weird. It's weird for me. Yeah, no, I left New York in 2010. I went to LA and I worked on a bunch of reality shows, and I just wasn't feeling it anymore. And I came back to New York, and now I'm a teacher. So I totally left, and now I teach mostly ninth graders, but high school English, and I run a theater program after school. So I run all of our after school, high school theater. So I kind of went back to my college roots with theater, and so I get to work with young people again, and that's a lot of fun for me.
I really think they are a lucky bunch of students, David.
Well, thank you. I hope, I have a great time, and it's so fun, and it's a totally different kind of challenge, and I like to be challenged. So,
but you've just, through your work, you've experienced a lot of things that can help those kids a lot.
No, I think it has been helpful to like have a different experience outside of a school. I lived in major cities and worked with so many different people and done so many different things, not only at Guiding Light, but in the other jobs I had along the way. And that, I think, has influenced me as a teacher. And I try to share that with my students as much as possible. And their energy keeps me young. So that's
good. Janet?
Still in New York. Well, not at the moment. Right now I'm in my parents' basement in Michigan.
Keeping safe.
Staying inside, but still in production. I've kind of bounced around to a bunch of different things, but generally just grateful to be working.
Amen to that. Amanda went back to school and got a very learned a very cool trait. I'm sure her husband and kids are very lucky.
I right after Guiding Light went off, I went to culinary school for pastry, and I worked in some bakeries in New York before we left, and then we moved to Philly, and I worked on wasn't on a food truck. I was in a kitchen, but all of the products I made were then sold off of a food truck the next day for like cupcakes and pies, and then moved to Boston and worked taught cooking classes through a nonprofit. And then since having my kids, I would make cakes, for family and friends along the way. But since then I've just been managing my two kids and that's it.
I'll send you my address. I'll send you my address.
Amanda makes the best cake.
Does she? Oh, I have a horrible sweet tooth, so.
She made Jen's wedding cake.
Oh, wow.
I did. Talk about family. That's one of my proudest
birthday cake. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, they are a
Awesome.
super couple. So just to give a shout out to Jamanda, which is Jamanda.
There was a character named after her.
Yeah.
There was a character name.
Tell us about that. You're right. Tell everybody about that.
Who coined it? Jilly? Was it Jilly?
I think Jill, because Jilly would call us, Jill Ori Horse would call us the power couple because, that little scheduling script room was like, we were in our own world there. We kind of, I don't know.
Everything passed through it.
Everything passed through it.
Everything passed through. Everything passed through us. If not through the scripts, through the schedule, you could not, a show could not get to the air without passing through our room.
And who was Jamanda? Who created it? Did Jill create that character?
I think she did.
It was towards the end, and something to do with Natalia. It was towards the end, and it was something to do with
Natalia,
right? It was Natalia. It was.
I can't remember.
I forget.
Our memories are
But I have
spectacular.
I still have a pin. I have like a Team Jamanda pin or something. Like somebody gave it to me. I
That's
don't
so
remember.
funny.
I
But
still
yes,
miss it.
but I do love Jamanda.
My coffee in the morning with Jamanda. That was my favorite time.
I was thinking. I was
Coffee
thinking
time
about
with Jamanda.
Yeah.
Coffee
And
time with
we-
Jamanda.
We had
On
this
Friday,
couch.
sometimes it was coffee and lunch with Jamanda.
With all of you, it was a lot of times, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then drinks after that.
Yes.
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 Lots of drinks, right, Jen?
Yes. Jake's Tree. That's where everybody got together after work. It was
And
fun.
what are you up to these days?
I'm a digital content director now, so I kind of went the digital marketing and event marketing route. I went to Nurse Jackie for a little bit as a producer assistant, and did some other production work here and there. But I think like David, I just decided it wasn't for me anymore. And I went kind of the marketing route and do a lot of webinars and stuff like that.
What you all did was hard work. It was no easy feat what you produced every day. And Alex, you moved away.
I did just recently, but I work for Nickelodeon now in their on their production team in their live action production, and started out with them in New York, and then in October of 19, just before we went into quarantine and pandemic, I moved out to LA because most of my team was out here. And yeah, so I've been in my 2-bedroom apartment in California.
Are you liking it out there?
It's hard to tell.
Hard to say.
It's hard to tell, really, because, after we first got here, it took us a couple of months to get settled and unpack our 100 boxes and, all of that type of stuff. And just as we were starting to, be able to get out and explore, March came and, I live 15 minutes from Chris and I still haven't seen him. I've driven by his house a couple of times, but, I haven't seen him.
I've driven by your building a couple of times.
Well, it's funny because we were out just driving around because we were bored, and I was like, let's go see where Chris lives. So I plugged in his address, and then afterwards I told him, I'm like, hey, I drove by your house. And then Chris, I didn't tell you this part. We actually happened by it again by accident. We were at the dog park by you.
Oh, right. Really close.
And Bruce took a wrong turn out of the dog park, and he just started driving around trying to figure out, and we happened by, and it was shortly after Bill had gotten your new outdoor flag.
Uh-huh.
And I had seen what it was on Facebook. I'm like, that's got to be their house again. And I looked at the street and it was like, yep, that's their house.
That's so funny. David, did you just raise your finger because you saw Jill's comment go by?
Yes, I did.
So the character was Doris's girlfriend, Amanda.
Oh, right.
In the wedding and at
Jill's memory.
So it was in my script.
You didn't remember.
I forgot. Chris
Before I
and I
let you
walked
go,
each other when I lived in LA, and we saw each other twice. So
I mean, I live 5 minutes from Alan and Nitty, and I don't see
Yeah.
I know. Well, I ran once to Jen and Nitty, but we've been under this, but now that we're vaccinated, we had drinks once. What do you think is the biggest thing you learned from your whole experience at Guiding Light?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, geez.
Can I say something? I want to say
Yeah.
something. I think, this group of people here, if I can toot all of our horns, this group that you're talking to, Alan, can do anything. They were the most flexible and the most talented and were able to pivot, go from the old-fashioned multi-camera system of shooting a soap opera, and that's how we were all raised and all brought up in this system, in this method, and we turned that upside down, and we turned it upside down without missing a beat. And it really is because of this group of people and the other half of us who aren't on the call. But it just makes me think, in hindsight, all the jobs I've had and all the teams I've worked with, this is truly one of the most talented group of people I've ever worked with, and I would work with any single one of them anywhere. If any one of them called me and said, hey, come, I've got a job, I would go to any of them. And same, I would drag any of them with me if I was going someplace. This is a really, really good group. And I want the audience, anyone who's watching, to understand that Guiding Light had a lot of love and a lot of passion behind it. But there was also all of these people. And it was these people who had that love and that passion that made it, what it is. That's it.
I love
Thanks,
that.
Chris.
I love that.
I know, I really
love
do
that.
mean that. And I do. And I wish, I went and did 10 years as, I was the showrunner for The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, which was a reality show. And we shot in people's homes and in real restaurants and out on the street and in parks. And I just wish we had learned those skills just a little bit sooner. And we could have applied all of that to PPAC. And PPAC and the new model would have been amazing. We all would have been able to pull it off with such success. And it's what you said before, Alan, that we all went off the air just a little bit too soon.
But the other thing about what you're talking about, though, is you also learned it in front of our audience.
That's what I was going to say.
Because we didn't have the opportunity to miss a beat because we went from one, the
right
old,
into the other
old model right into the new model without being off the air for a week to even learn it. Not even a day.
No.
It's like watching a training video. And I get that that's unfair to the audience sometimes, but it really did keep us on the air for 2 more years. And no one loved Guiding Light more than me, and every person that's sitting in this room, whatever, will attest that how much I loved the show and would have done anything to save it. So, and it really did keep us on the air for 2 more years. And it wasn't always easy, but it was done with a lot of love.
I was going to say, besides like the learning piece of it, I just feel like those last 2 years like really cemented everybody together.
Oh yeah.
Like we pick up, we were in like the backstage, and like it's like as soon as everybody pops up, it's just the same. I mean, we haven't talked since like a year ago when we got, we did like a pandemic reunion, and I think like I'm just grateful for that part of it.
You all can't see that, but I just got a text from Zimmer who says, "Hey, I'm watching in the car heading back from Taos. Tell everyone I said hello."
Hi, Zimmer.
She messaged me the other day. She's like, when was that? And I was like, it's Friday. She's like, oh.
She's somebody else. We actually didn't talk about her much on the show, but she is, such an amazing person, because here she is sort of spearheading the show, but was so down to earth. Chris talked about his moment where, she might have been a little feisty when he first shot her with the thing, but at the end of the day, she's also somebody who could laugh about herself. Yeah. I mean, I've tailgated with her at a Jets game. Like, she really is just an amazing person. So,
well, we all would have reacted the way Kim reacted if somebody sprayed us with water.
Right. Exactly.
So, 150%.
Chris will attest to that on other shows. That was not necessarily the case with other leading ladies.
Oh, so for sure.
You rode the bus into work from New Jersey and got off at Port Authority and hoofed it over to 44th Street and, was down to earth and, a totally different type of leading lady than, that might exist on a different show. And
totally down to earth. Yeah, even since, anytime Wicked has come through California or LA, I've taken my girls, and Kim has always opened up that backstage door for us and taken my kids to show all the magic tricks and meet all the other actors and take everyone backstage. Ooh, sorry. She's always been such, sorry, dropped my phone. She's always been, like Alex said, really down to earth and just a normal person to work with.
She's a spirit animal. There is no doubt. There is no doubt. Janet, you answered the question, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm counting
that. Amanda, for you?
I don't. I even forget what was the actual question. It's like what we discussed.
What do you think that you learned the most?
Oh, okay. Just the relationships and how rare and special it was to work with such a team and how much a team matters. Like, and the people you work with really, truly matters. I don't remember who said it to me. I think it was Lou. I could be wrong. But someone towards the end, it was definitely within the last year, is going to like said to me, you don't realize, because this was my second job out of college. I was an intern at Guiding Light. There was no spot available, so I went to work at CNBC. And when I graduated in June, and then by October, a coordinator had left, Sarah had left, and I took her spot after that. So this was only my second job. I hadn't worked a lot of places. And I think it was Lou who said, you don't realize you're never going to have this again. This is incredibly special.
Louis thing. It sounds like a Louis thing.
You don't realize how special this is. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because doing the show, and I hear from fans, and I think, you know, in all of the PR we did for the show, you didn't fully get to see something like this where we got to just talk and share experiences, and people are realizing how close. I mean, just look today, how many of our colleagues showed up to see your faces, you know, Kim sending a text, Brian sending, you know, it shows what a group of people we all worked with. Well, Jennifer, for you.
Come on.
Well, we were, you know, Alan, it was this, towards the end at least, we were committed to creating something new while trying to save something that was old. And I think we were all equally passionate about that. And we didn't want to let down the fans, and we didn't want to let down the actors, and we didn't want to let down Ellen. And I think we came together to try to do everything we could. We brought all our talents to the table in that last push to save this, and save it in a creatively interesting way, in a new visually interesting way. And I think we were all bonded by that. It was an amazing team, and it was an amazing time. Lou's the one who said that yeah, I think we were also in the thick of it, that I don't think any of us realized what we were going to take away from it.
And I don't have to, you know, ask the question, because I know the answer. We were all heartbroken on that April 1st, 2009, when we learned, you know, on a ridiculous day, that the show was canceled.
Yeah.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add to?
I remember that day so vividly. It was so vividly. And, you know, me and Janet had a bit of an inside joke. I thought that she would know before I did if the show got canceled. So I used to say to her, like, I know you can't tell me, like, if you find out somehow and I don't find out the same time as you, like, you have to tell me. And she was like, well, we'll have a code word. So it was like, you know, watermelon. Like, okay, if you say watermelon, like, I know something bad is about to happen. You know, I really know this is coming. And they call everybody down to the rehearsal hall. And at that point, I don't know why we're going down there. And when we go down there, I see all of the P&G people. Oh. Everybody has very straight faces. And then everyone starts filing in. I mean, all the producers, any cast that was there, I mean, the entire production of people. And I was like, oh no, like, I know what this is. And I said to Janet, I was like, it's a watermelon. Really?
I think you texted me. I wasn't there. I was in my apartment waiting to sign for a package. And actually, to her credit, Ellen called me, like, I think on her way into the production office, and said, listen, I've got to tell you this really fast. The show, CBS is like canceling the show, but like, that also speaks to her. She was like, who's not here that I can call immediately? And then I think Jen was like watermelon with this like sad face when she texted me. But
yeah, well, I think Gina texted back like, no fruit salad. Like, it's so like, it's done.
You were waiting on a package. I was signing a lease on a new apartment on April 1st. And, you know, said to my husband, I don't think we should sign. And he's like, we're going to sign.
Don't you remember? Ro came in the back door. And Amanda, you remember that?
Was it Allison or Jill?
It was Allison.
It was Allison.
It was Allison and Jill. It was like, hi, Ro. And
no, that was me. I said hi, Ro.
And then, then Jill was like.
And Jill was like, I think Ro Southworth is here. And they're like, no, that's David just talking to, like, in Scooby-Doo language. Hi, Ro! And it was this big joke. Like, I was the one that really knew, but of course I was so clueless. Like, hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Allison Goodman just said it was her. Hi, Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Alex, for
that's
you,
what I remember about that day.
I was producing that day. I was in the booth. And
well, no, I was going to ask you because you've been there the longest. What do you think you learned? I mean, it must have been an incredible experience.
Well, it was definitely, I mean, I was there over 18 years. So, you know, Amanda was saying that it was only her second job. It was my first job. It was the only job I had. So I think, you know, part of it is having been there so long over so many different executive producers, sort of what I said before, is being flexible enough to adapt to each executive producer and their vision for the show and how they wanted to produce. Because a lot of times, you know, producers would come in and bring in their own team that they were, you know, comfortable working with. And I have to say, like, Guiding Light was great about that, is that, you know, with all the executive producers that we had, none of them ever really did that. They really worked with the team that was there and, you know, just taught us what they wanted, basically. So that was part of it. I don't know. I'd say strength in some ways, like, and just dealing with the craziness. There was always something crazy going on. I mean, did I ever think that I'd have to edit the show? No. I mean, no. Did I want to learn Final Cut Pro? No. I didn't. I remember Lou Gricci and I took a course. He was like, okay, well, if you have to do it, I'll do it too. So Lou Gricci and I took a course on how to do Final Cut Pro. And, you know, the fact that I created a line cut. And when I say edit, I'm like, I am certainly not saying I am an editor by any stretch of the imagination. I was basically just creating a line cut to get it to time and then turning it over to the real editors for, you know, the color correcting and the fine tuning and the, you know,
audio.
If a montage needed to be created, it was not me doing it.
So all of you did a line cut, and then our real editors would take and finish it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something else what you guys did. Bravo.
And that was something that Ellen wanted us to do, I think, for several reasons. One was it gave us more control over our episodes. We were really owning our episodes then at that point as a producer in terms of, you know, telling that story and what was in it, because we were deciding what got cut. Normally what would happen in the past was, you know, after you finish shooting, an AD would go down into edit with the director's notes and with any producer's notes, but they would mostly kind of decide on their own or come and ask us, say, hey, is it okay to cut this? Whereas now we were the ones making that decision directly and getting it to time. So that was one thing, was, you know, the overall control of it. And the second thing, it was a cost saving measure because she made us all become ADs. So like Chris was already an AD or a DGA, so that was fine. And so was Jan. But the rest of us had to join the DGA because technically you had to have an AD or somebody in the DGA in edit for the directors to make sure the director's vision got in there. And this way, basically part of our salaries, she wasn't having to hire an extra AD basically to be in edit. Like our AD fees were coming out of our producer salaries, sort of.
Now, my memory might not serve me, but Ellen got a lot of the idea for our new model from Friday Night Lights, right? I think it was that show that triggered this.
That was
for her.
She kind of wanted to go for,
right?
Because they shot the same as we did, but the look was the look.
I'm just thinking here, and I don't remember, and maybe I learned, where did Ellen come up with all of that, you know, to think of, you know, making you all ADs, making you all take final, you know, do you know where that process came from? Because that's incredible to really think of all of those things in the middle of, you know, executive producing the show. And like we said, we never took that day off. It just dawned on me, like, because it is all of what, you know, you all did, changing from that one model to the new model was such, you know, if you outline that, it would be, you know, a 20-page, guidebook on how to do this, or long, it all of a sudden dawned on me, like, does anybody know like where all of that came to her from?
I don't think it's all at once. I think some of it is just as like dynamics have to change and where it leads you. But I don't know. I don't think any of us can answer. But I think it's little things. Yeah, little things over time that are like, new realities. And to Jen's point, everything becomes a puzzle piece, and kind of where that ended up leading.
Right. I mean, I watch you guys. I mean, with technology, certain things we're testing out new microphones or this or that because we were doing it, Well,
that's really a testament. That's really a testament to like Lou and Tom Guadarrama and Janet's digital team, like Hans, like putting all of that technical stuff together and, building the cart and using, what was it, motorcycle batteries or something? Like,
I mean, some of the stuff we were looking for didn't exist. Like, I remember being on the phone with some vendors and we would say, this is what we want to do. And they'd say, well, that doesn't really work. And we would figure out what they had. I mean, people soldered things. I don't even know if solder is the right word, but people,
it is.
Rewired things to make the new model work the way that it did. I mean, when you think, because the difference for us was the amount of content you had to create in that day. Like, there was no infrastructure that had been built for hours and hours of shooting, and then having to edit it all, and then having to get it on air every day. So it was like some companies asked us for our notes as to how we were doing it so that they could, build the tech better. And it's just, but to Chris's point, we were just all in it together on the ride. So it's like you didn't even realize what you were doing as much as it just was like, here's the problem, how are we going to solve it? And then let's all move on to the next one and figure out how to keep this thing moving.
Yeah, and having a group of people that could do that, like that were really like, okay, what needs to be done? I'm going to jump in, I'm going to do it. There was nobody like, I'm not doing, let me stand off to the side, you do it. It's like this group of people was like, okay, what do we have to do next? Let's figure it out.
Jen, do you remember the day that Ellen came in our office and handed us 10 different pieces of paper and said, how do we make this one sheet of paper? Do you remember that? Like, that was like, literally, it was like, here's 10 different things that we use. Make this one sheet. So, like, it was just like, like you said, solving the problem, creating it.
And all the skills that, like, the rough cut edits that we did, every job I got after Guiding Light was because of that. Like, because I was a story producer in reality, and Chris can attest to this because of
for sure.
Like, that's what I did, as I built story. Like, I was a story producer, and what I did was I went through all this, raw footage and built a story on what they call a string out in reality, which is a rough cut of a show, and built the story from all that footage. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't learned that at Guiding Light. So.
That was not the most favorite that was not the most favorite thing of my job. I did not really care for the editing or any of that type of
Alex,
stuff.
we had no idea.
The only thing
I'm pretty sure Alex gave me her shows to cut a lot.
The only time I really liked it was doing the last episode. Like, that one I liked because then I could fight for that episode. Was so long. I think it was 10 to 15 minutes long by the time I sat down to try and edit it and to try and decide what to keep, knowing
where's the director's cut,
knowing that it's the final episode. And like, I fought to keep Kurt McKinney in there because, it was his final scene and all that type of stuff. So like being able to do that was fun, but I did not care for the editing part of it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know the fans enjoyed it. I see notes going by. I see somebody saying that Janet looks a lot like Orla Cassidy.
Well, that's so nice.
You do today.
You do.
Funny, you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, but when they said that, really, thank you all. I had a blast. I hope it wasn't too painful for you guys.
No, it's always nice to hang out.
Yes.
It was great, Alan. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Alan,
Thanks,
for inviting
Alan.
us.
Thank you.
Love it.
And anytime. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you. You
Thanks,
too.
guys. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Alex. Bye, David. And there goes Chris. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that show. Have a great weekend. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can do so right below. Turn on notifications so you're reminded of all upcoming shows. Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye.